This is a pale ale. Oh, it's good. It's sweet, malty. The hops are present enough to really notice them, and they have a citrusy note to them. Very good tasting. Brewing isn't a hard thing to do. It's a lot of fun, and it yields a lot of products. Once you learn the lessons in this video, you're going to know how to make a lot of things. Even though this goes into how to brew beer, the lessons learned here cross over to wine, cider, all kinds of stuff. So also you can do hard seltzers. They're not hard. So please watch this video, enjoy the video. If you have questions, comments, or anything, drop them down in that box. Also, if you would, please, at some point, take a look in the description box. There's some links there. One's to Wisio, excuse me, not Wisio, but Wildgrains. I do have a Wisio link also. Check out the Wildgrains. That is a product that is pastas, pastries, and sourdoughs. The best sourdoughs you'll ever taste. And they come in a subscription service. That is a link right there in that. Also, there's another link there for the chef's temp thermometers. Everybody should have a really good thermometer in their kitchen, and that is a good quality one that's easy to handle and easy to use. Very good quality. Check it out. Also, please relax. Get something to drink. Enjoy the video. Making sure that I have everything out that I'm wanting you to see. Okay, this is a video. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Stuart. This is Texas Cooking Today. Welcome to my kitchen. And today we're going to be doing a home brew. Now, home brewing, this is really cool. First, before we go into the home brewing and discuss what we're making here, let's discuss legalities. Now, I'm doing this in the United States of America, and I live in Texas. And where I live, making homebrew is legal. Now, if you may live in a country where it's not legal, I do not know. So make sure you check your laws before you make any decisions about doing anything like this. And remember, when you come to making alcohol, making it's one thing, but drinking it, you have to be of legal age. And it is not good for young minds. So for kids, stay away from it. For adults, enjoy this craft and enjoy the many benefits it gives you. Legalities are, in the United States of America, at one time it was illegal to make beer, wine, cider, anything that had alcohol, and it was illegal to drink it, and it was illegal to sell it, and we called that time prohibition. And it was really a messed up situation. Nobody was happy, and there was just as many people drinking, if not more. When you make something illegal, people for some reason just want to do it. All right, now that having been said, after Prohibition, it was made legal to go back to making fermented beverages. And the wording of the legislation that allowed this to happen left out the wording for beer, okay, or for, grain fermented kind of beverages. And as a result, they remained illegal to produce up until the presidency of Jimmy Carter. And I don't know if you remember this, but one of the first things Jimmy Carter did when he got into office was to make home brewing of beer legal. It was already legal to make wine and cider. I mean, wine is like 14% alcohol and beer is 6 to 7%. So did it make any sense for it to not be legal? No, it was just a mistake. It was a typo basically in the law that needed to be corrected. It was his administration that corrected it. Some people said it was because he wanted it to, he wanted his brother Billy to not get in trouble because Billy made homebrew, and he wanted to legalize it for that purpose. Whether that's true or not, or if that had anything to do with his decision, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. He made it legal. Okay, so we can make anything basically that is a fermented beverage in the United States. And Check with your state laws, but in most states, the national level that you can brew at just kind of is the level that the state has chosen for home brewers. Now, for a home brewer in the United States, you can brew up to 250 gallons per household. That's a lot of that's a lot of beer, and frankly, nobody's going house to house checking, folks. All right, but I just can't imagine making that much beer in a year. That's a lot. That having been said, all right, lots of fun, great hobby, and realistically, when I was brewing on a regular basis, and there may be a bit of change in this now, but I had my brewing costs down to about $22 to $24 per batch, depending on which batch of beer I was making. And the adjustments were in the cost of the hops and in the quantity of grain that I was using and how I was using the grains. In some recipes you don't use as much, in other recipes you use more, and those that use more naturally cost more. But yeah, about $22 to $24 per batch. Now what that comes down to in the way of number of bottles, that's 2 cases, ladies and gentlemen. That's a 5-gallon batch, and that makes 2 cases of beer, and there's usually a couple of extra bottles at the end of it as well. So you'll normally get about 50 bottles total. Really fun, easy. There's a lot of stuff that I have out here. And you know, beer was, let me back up a little. Why brew your own beer? You know, outside of it being a really fun hobby. Okay, why? You can go down to the store and buy beer, right? Well, folks, number one, that's expensive. Number two, let me give you a comparison that really works well. And the ingredients are very similar between these 2 items. Compare this way. Have you ever tasted homemade bread? If you've had homemade bread, you know that it is substantially different than the white bread that you buy at the store, which is very bland. And it doesn't have a lot of character to it. So there's a big difference between that homemade white bread and what you would get at the store. Flavor, texture, all of it, way better. And it is exactly the same with this. Okay, when brewing companies are making beer, they're making massive batches, monstrous batches. The bigger the company, the bigger the batch. And the batches that like Anheuser-Busch kicks out are just tremendous. They're huge. So it's harder to control overall quality when you're dealing with that much beer at once. But when you're doing homebrew, just as when you're doing cooking at home, you can produce food, or in this case, brew, that is substantially better than what you're looking at in the store or what big makers can do. The only beers that you can really find that come close to what you can get in a homebrew are going to be those from microbreweries. Okay, so let's get into this. What I'm going to be making today is going to be a pale ale. This is my own recipe, and I'm going to go and grab my book that I keep this recipe in, and that way we get all of our measurements just right. But it is going to be using a variety of ingredients that I have out here. I have some caramel malt, and this is dextrin malt, and I have biscuit malt. This is malt extract. And we're going to discuss all of this. I've got some yeast over here and some other kinds of hops, as well as a big bag of Cascade hops here. There are so many different kinds of malts and so many different kinds of hops that the numbers and types of beers that you can produce are endless. Okay, it's just an incredible amount of possibilities when it comes to making really good brew. Also, if there is a beer that you just absolutely love that you buy, you can get a clone recipe, folks. Almost every beer out there, in fact, I'm pretty sure just every beer out there has had a clone recipe made of it. And it's easy to produce those flavors that the big brewers make. So if you are a Budweiser drinker and you want your beer to taste like Budweiser, there's a clone recipe. Okay, just that simple. let me get my book. Well, I'm back and I'm here with the good book. That's true. It's the Book of Fermentations. That's the good book. Oh yeah, it's got some good recipes in it. Okay, so this one, let me see here. All right, so I need 6 pounds of this. I need 1 pound of this and 1 pound of this and 1/2 of a pound of this. Oh yeah, oh there it is. And then I'll need a couple of ounces of this. This is hops right here. We're going to take a look at all of these ingredients up close, and that way you have a good idea really what they look like. And then I'm going to be using this yeast right here. I've got a couple of different strains of yeast right down in here that I use, and this is one of the best yeasts there is when it comes to home brewing. This is a company called White Labs. This is their yeast number 001, their California ale yeast. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want a really good yeast for home brewing, especially something to start with, this is a good choice. However, it needs to be said, it's not a cheap yeast. Each packet of this is going to run you about $11 or $12, all right? It's pricey. Now, by the way, I am not endorsed by any of these companies. So if I mention a name or a brand, I'm not endorsing that brand. I'm just saying that this is what I have used to get good results. All right, and that's as close to, I guess, an endorsement as you would get from me, but that's not my purpose. My purpose is to help turn you on to stuff that has worked well for me. Now, there's other yeasts that work very well, and you're going to find that each yeast has a different and unique flavor. And there are, wow, I don't know if there's hundreds, but I know there's high dozens of different varieties of yeast. So different brands and different varieties, yeah, you're going to find a lot of choices. So take a look at your brew supplies and you're going to be surprised at the different kinds of things you see, how many different ones. Also, the same way with hops. Hops have all kinds of different flavors. The hops that I'm going to be using for this recipe has a citrusy and slightly grapefruit-like quality to it. It doesn't taste exactly like grapefruit, but it's kind of like that. And it's somewhat citrusy. It is not a heavy hop. It's not really super hoppy. It's a mild hop. And it has a beautiful aroma. It's very floral, and so it adds a lot to a beer. So I'll be using Cascade hops for this. That's one of my favorite hops. There's other hops that I use, and one of them that I've never used, and that's this one. And I've been looking so forward to trying this out. This is lemon drop hops, and it is supposed to have a lemon flavor. In fact, they say the aroma is a lemon, orange, grapefruit, citrus, blackberry, super Cascade balsam. It's typically used for IPAs, sessions, hybrid beers, and hoppy lagers. So, hoppy lager right here. I'll be making and this has an alpha acid content similar to that of Cascade. In fact, it's a little bit lower, so it's not going to be real intense. All right, now I'm going to put my yeasts back in my refrigerator because it's important to keep this stuff nice and cold. All right, now if you are brand new to home brewing, let me give you a real quick rundown to making beer and how it works. Okay, so we all know beer is made, well, most of us know at least, that beer is made from barley and hops and yeast and water. It is those 4 ingredients. That's what makes beer. Okay, now, what is this other stuff? Let me explain. When we're going to make beer, we take a grain like this. Let me get a bowl to pour some of this into. This is a grain that is called barley. All right, now, barley is a type of wheat. Barley actually has a beautiful aroma to it. Some of them are more aromatic than others. And I'd like to explain some of the difference. Kind of roll this up a little. All right, now, These are big 10-pound bags of grain right here. And if you're going to be brewing any amount of beer, and I'll be making several batches, then you're going to need plenty of grains. Now, I'm going to be making about a total of 6 batches of beer, which is going to be a total of 12 cases of beer. And I've got enough ingredients to do that with. All right, and I'm going to be making different types. I've got different kinds of ingredients, but some of them remain constant. I use this one down here, which provides a better mouthfeel and head to it, but it doesn't have much in the way of flavor or color. This one has a lot of flavor to it, and it also improves the sweetness and the mouthfeel of the beer, and it gives it kind of a caramel-like flavor to it. It's very good stuff. These are crystal malts. And then this one over here is going to give me a cracker-like flavor, more of a, in fact, cracker is the best way of saying it, a bread-like flavor. That bread crust is what this is, and so it's well named. It's called biscuit, and it gives that biscuit flavor. Now, we take this grain. If we're going to do all grain brewing, we take this and we convert the starches that are in this grain, we convert those to sugars. And we do that by soaking it in water after we break the grain open. We use a mill to do that with, and I'll show you that. We break the grain open and then we put it in water and we bring it up in temperature. And by bringing it to the right temperature, we activate enzymes that are in this grain. The enzymes that we're talking about, we refer to as diastase. All right. Now, your diastatic enzymes are 2 different kinds of enzymes that we refer to amylase enzymes. One is an alpha amylase and the other is a beta amylase. These 2 enzymes, when they get warm and wet, they become active and they start nibbling away at the starch chains that are in the grain. One of them, the alpha amylase, breaks the starch chains in half. And then the other one, the beta amylase, nibbles away at the ends of those starch chains to turn it into sugar. It is those sugars that are our fermentable product, okay? So that's how that works. Now here's the cool thing. If you take that fermentable product you make from this, and then you remove the excess water, you get a syrup that we call malt extract, and that's what's back here in this big bin, and that's what's here in this can. All right. A lot of people, when they start brewing, they purchase malt extract in a can like this, and it says hopped or pre-hopped malt extract. And that way it already has the hops cooked into it. All you have to do is dissolve this into water, boil it for a little bit, then cool it down, add some more water and yeast, and suddenly you're making beer. All right. Now this one is an unhopped malt extract. This one I purchased, it's an amber extract. I bought this one to make my brown beer with, and I have 2 of these. One thing you'll notice, the minute you pick one of these things up, you'll be surprised at the weight of the can. All right, it's surprisingly heavy stuff. Like this back here, if this was just water, it wouldn't weigh nearly as much as it does. But with this malt extract in it, this is 32 pounds right here, folks. And that's enough for 5 batches of beer and with a little bit left over. All right, so these are neat and they lower your cost per batch when you're buying extract in this amount. So basically the extract does the end run of you not having to do all of the conversion work in those grains, all right? There's a type of brewing that combines both the use of this as well as the conversion method where we're changing some of our starches for sugar, so we're getting good conversion by adding in a certain type of malt. And I use a 6-row malt for that, and that adds a lot of diastatic enzyme to the beer malts, and I get good conversion. All right, now let's take a look at another thing. And I am not measuring these yet. I'm just pulling them out so you can see them. And then I'm going to get busy measuring what I need. Okay, so hop pellets. these little green pellets, okay? This is hops that have been compressed into these little, what we call hop pellets. This is a great way to hop your beer. We put this inside of a sock. Literally, I like to use cotton socks, but there's also special hopping socks that you can purchase. I find standard cotton socks work really good. And we're not using the ones out of your drawers for your feet, folks. We're using brand new socks, okay? That's the way to go. And I find the cotton ones work well, and they can be reused over and over and over again. So it's a great way to go. Hops, this is one of the delicious flavors, but it also adds an antibacterial to your beer. So it's a very important agent that goes in the beer, and it's very necessary, okay? It's adds the bittering, it adds a lot of the aroma, and also much of the flavor is derived from your hops. I need a scale, and I'll mention this. The scale that you need is going to have to be able to measure like 1/4 of an ounce or 1/2 of an ounce. And hops are also measured by the gram. Okay, so here is a small bag. This is a 1 ounce serving of hops, and 1 ounce of hops is 28.3 grams. Well, if you ignore the 0.3, it's easy to figure, 14 grams is going to be a 1/2 of an ounce, and 7 grams is going to be roughly 1/4 of an ounce. So much easier to weigh these if you're using grams. Just be straight up about it. All right. So we know the amount that we're looking for. To convert, it's very easy. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to measure my hops. Now my recipe for the boil uses 1 ounce of hops, and that's when we're boiling our wort. Okay, so I'm going to pour out a total of 28.3 grams. Okay, 23, 27, oops, we're at 29, let me pull one out. There we go, 28 grams right there. So that's my boiling. Now this is made by a company called Breus. Breus produces a lot of brewing malts. Some of the best flavors I know of come from Breus, okay? So it's a company that I am personally very sold on. I love their malt extract. It is a very good quality, very good flavor. And the thing of it is if you're buying malt extract, buying it in bulk will save you some serious dollars. How much you pay per pound comes way down. Okay, now, something I'm going to do, switch my units to pounds. There we go. So if I'm going to measure out my pounds, that's just the unit I go ahead and use. For me, it's easy. 5, 14, there we go, 6. Now if you get an extra ounce or 2 in there, folks, don't lose any sleep over it. Okay? It won't hurt a thing. And this gives you a good chance right here to taste this product. It is sweet. It is sugary. You could put that on your pancakes. All right, it's good stuff. All right, so I'll pull that aside. I have my malt extract measured out for my beer. Now this particular grain I need 1 pound of. This is the crystal malt. Crystal malt tin lava bond. Now lava bond, what that is that's a color rating that's used for malts. Okay, I need 1 pound of this. Okay. Now through the use of crystal malts, we can seriously affect the color and flavor of a beer. This is a light crystal malt. It's 10 lava bond. You can get 150 lava bond, which is dark brown like coffee, and one in between like 90 lava bond would be kind of a brown. Those are the ones that are used in brown beers and porters and also stouts. So the darker that crystal malt, the more rich and deep the flavor and the color. Okay, now this malt doesn't really have much aroma. It doesn't really have a lot of flavor or much color. What it's used for is the head retention, the mouth feel, the body of the beer. It's all very affected by this malt right here. And I'm using 1 pound of it. All right, now our last grain right here, this is the biscuit malt. And this is the one that gives it that kind of crackery-like flavor. Let me zero my scale again. I need 1/2 pound of biscuit malt. So 8 ounces it is. There we go. 8 ounces of biscuit malt, and I can already smell that. The aroma of this one, that is one of the best smelling malts that I know of. The biscuit malts are just fantastic, and they lend so much to a beer. So on this recipe, that's an important one right there. Okay, now I have here a nice big bucket. Got one of these in it for frying, but it works great for brewing, and that's what I originally bought it for. There we go. I probably got about 2 to 2.5 gallons of water in here, roughly. Okay, about equipment. At this part of the brewing game, of course, you have to have a big pot to brew in. That's pretty big, but you can do this in smaller pots. I used to brew in an 11-quart pot for a long time. I would pour that hot wort down in the carboy and then put in cold water, or already have the cold water in the carboy waiting. So that was one way of doing it. This gives me a little more space so I can do more all grain brewing when I do that. Sometimes I do half grain brewing and half malt extract. Other times I do what I'm doing now, which is using the malt extract for the sugar and using the grains for flavor. So I'm not trying to get any conversion on the grains. Now I need my temperature on my water back here at 160 degrees. And folks, that is so important. When it comes to brewing, temperatures really matter, okay? Let me pull this out. This guy here is a brewing thermometer of mine. It's a lower temperature thermometer, but it's a very sensitive one. This one is designed to read between about 200 degrees Fahrenheit and 0. So it's a lower temperature thermometer than your typical cooking thermometer. Quite accurate though. I will suspend this down in my pot and it just kind of hangs out down in there and does its own thing. And then later when I am brewing, this gives me good accurate temperature. Now I'll say this, I need to mention that even though my videos aren't sponsored, that I do have an affiliate agreement with 2 different companies. There were 2 companies I found that I would really like to work with. Both of them that produce superior products. So I don't make any money on the video from them, but I do make money if you use the links in my description box. One of those items is the sourdough bread, which is Wildgrains, and they make sourdough breads and pastas and pastries. It's a monthly subscription thing. They come frozen. You keep them in your freezer, bake them in the oven for 20 minutes, pull it out, and boom, you got delicious sourdough. I can go on for hours about the crescent rolls. You gotta try those. Anyway, there's that, and also this. We were talking about thermometers, and this applies too. This is a chef's thermometer that is made by Chef's Temp. They make a really cool thermometer. Fits in the hand very easy to read. The face on this will rotate When that light goes out, you can just push the button, it turns right back on, just like so. So even if it's upside down, you're going to get a right side up reading because it'll sense gravity. The rechargeable battery on this one, a small probe that does very little damage, and a very good quality thermometer. This will work for brewing also. If you want to know that water temperature, you want to make sure it's 160. These things are extremely accurate and they read very, very quickly. So you can use this kind of thermometer for brewing as well. All right, take a look at those links if you're interested in that stuff. Let's move on with this. The other ingredients, other equipment that I have out here, I've got some socks, as you've seen here. I was telling you about how I just use regular socks for hop socks, tube socks, cotton. And then if these get like nasty and I don't want to use them or they just get old, I just throw them away. It's not a big deal. And in fact, I threw my old ones away and decided I've just got a brand new pack, so I'll just use those. Also, if they're cheap enough, you don't have to feel upset about cleaning them. When you don't want to clean them, just throw them away and move on. They make a little bag like this. It's called a hop bag. It's a fine mesh bag. This is also okay for doing hopping. However, I have found that this mesh bag will seep a little bit from the top up here because it doesn't close completely. So if you use this, I would recommend some sort of a clip up here to help close it more. These work okay. I've used them many, many times. For some beers, they're just the bomb. And of course, it's a reusable item, thereby lowering your cost for making each beer. They do make disposable hop socks. I don't recommend using those, even though they work well. It's just that you spend more money buying those. These back here are what we call grain bags. That's how you get the grains back out of the water. They're already inside of this nice steeping bag. When these things get old, the mesh opens up on them a little bit and they actually work a little bit better, all right? And something else that's important. When we're putting grains in this, if I want to remove some of the chaff from the grains, some of that loose husk, then this helps tremendously. So your grain bag is very important. Now I've got a couple of small ones there and I've got a big one here, and they make these in jumbo size also. They make one much bigger than this, where you can do all grain brewing actually in these bags instead of having to have some more expensive equipment that helps you to separate the grains from your wort. They call that a lauter tune, and it is used for separating the wort from the loose grains that are floating around in it. And the wort is what we call a beer that has been cooked up, okay? That is what we call that. Before it is fermented, it is a wort. Now, check my temperature here. Right, this right here is a grain mill that's used for brewing, and it has a couple of wheels on the bottom, very heavy steel wheels, those are stainless, that break the grains down, okay? And the idea here is to separate the meat on the inside of the grain from its husk, and also to break that grain into smaller pieces so that it will more easily disperse its flavor, and it can also be converted on starches when you're doing that kind of brewing. All right, now in this case we're not doing that kind of brewing, but we are going to be using these for flavor, and I want to go ahead and get them cracked. So here's the biscuit malt that I just finished cracking. If you'll notice, it's all broken apart now. You can see just little clumps of grains, and where it looks like you have whole grains, they're really not. They're actually already cracked. They're broken open, so they're not really whole. Anyway, that is a good crack right there, and that's what I'm looking for. I don't want it too powdery, but we do sometimes get some of this going on. Don't let that bother you. That's not going to affect your beer. All right, now I'm going to transfer my grains to my grain bag. And what I want to do here is I'm just going to stretch this over this bowl, pour my grains right into it. Now I actually transferred it to the medium bowl for the purpose of illustration, so y'all could see me doing that. Otherwise I would have just taken my bucket and poured it right in here. I just thought it looked better like that. Now, what I want to do is take my grain bag. I don't need all of this, so I can just tie off a good portion here. Oh man, I forgot how good the aroma is from this. It's been a few years since I have been brewing, and oh, that biscuit malt especially just smells so good. Now, some of that powder that we had down in there, which is perfectly good, you can use it. It's going to create a good beer. However, there's a lot of husk material there too in that powder, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of that small stuff. See all of that mess there? This right here, with all of these husks, contains a lot of tannins that make a beer bitter, okay? I don't need all those extra tannins in there. Normally, you could winnow the grains, and that's where we, just break loose the outer part of the grain. If I opened up my mill, I could do that, where it just loosens up that husk, and then we use a fan blowing through the grains as they fall to blow the husks away while the grains fall through. And that's how we winnow, but it isn't necessary. I just do it this way with a grain bag and get great results. So I'm going to take this outside. I'm going to sift it back and forth until I get most of that out of there, and then my grains are ready to steep with. So I've got water heating here, and I've been checking it with my chef's thermometer. There we go. Yeah. So I've got about 147 right now. That's coming up in temperature. Now I've got my beer thermometer here, and I normally just leave this right down in the pot. But folks, you don't want to have to fish things out or try to find things, all right? So what I recommend is tie a loop in the end of the thermometer string. Oh, that's right, have a thermometer string. That way you can do what I'm doing right here. There we go. There. Now once it's tied off, I don't have to worry about it. It can just kind of hang out in there and do its thing. And I'll be able to look at it anytime I want. That thermometer will float, and it's designed to. When my liquids get high enough in here, it'll certainly be doing that. My grains bag right here, which is still dropping a little bit of those husks, but the majority of them have been removed. I want to get it right down in here. And I'm going to sift that grain back and forth just a little bit, because I want all of it to get good and wet. Okay, I'm getting ready to put my hops in socks or in a hop bag. I haven't decided which way I want to go yet. I have created so many beers with these bags that are reusable. This is one of the ways that we lower cost. Also, having hop socks that we can use again and again and again. That's another way to lower your costs. And here, these were actually a gift. Somebody gave me socks one year for Christmas. I was very grateful, and that individual had no idea that I planned to take those socks and turn them into a beer making tool. So anyway, I'm going to take my hop sock, and we'll pour hops right down into that. Come on, get in there. There it goes. There. So, got all of my hops down here in the end. All I have to do is take this, just tie it off, boom. Now, the nice thing is this allows all of the oils, God, that smells good. This allows all of the oils from the hops to be imparted to the beer wort while keeping all of the vegetation matter, that green part, out of your beer. So you don't want that getting in the beer. You don't want these things leaking, which they sometimes do around the top, like I mentioned. So don't worry about that if they do, because it's not going to ruin the beer if you get a little of that green in it. This just makes it a lot cleaner and a lot less sediment in the bottom of your primary fermenter once you're finished that fermentation. 1 ounce for the boil, a 1/2 ounce for finishing, and a 1/2 ounce for flavor. And that gives you that beautiful aroma and the flavor at the end of that. And it really works well. It's one of the things that sets apart homebrew beers from commercial beers. All right, it has been 90 minutes, and I'm going to take my grains, which are now considerably heavier, We'll pull them out of that hot water. And remember to be careful when handling these grains when you're pulling it out, because you're still dealing with some pretty hot liquid. Let me see what temperature is down in there. Yeah, this is still about 135 degrees, and that's hot enough to burn you. So be careful. Now I'm going to take this, put it in this colander, and then drop it into a bowl, and I will pour what drips out of it back into the wort. Now this liquid right here, this tea that we've made, we're going to turn this into our beer, but I need to get the malt extract down in this and the hops down in there and bring it to a boil. Now I'm going to forewarn you, this is starchy and it can come foaming right over the top of your pot real easy. So be gentle as far as your boil. Watch it closely. If it starts foaming up on you, turn down your heat a little bit. And remember, get your hops in there early, because the oils from the hops can help reduce that boil over problem. Now, there we go. Oh yeah. Now I'll say this, when you've got it down to this and you're trying to clean out the remainder of your malt extract, all you really have to do is just scoop up some of that water that you have down in there. That warm water will dissolve this real quick and easy, and you'll be able to get every bit out of it. Okay, so there's your little hint that'll help you to get all of your money's worth. All right, now I have this wonderful, very, very sweet situation. Now, it needs to be said that that stuff does not just immediately dissolve, as you see right there. It's going to hit the bottom of your pan. It's just going to kind of spread out. So you're going to have to sit there and stir it for a little bit to get it to dissolve. At the same time, start getting your hops wet, okay? I try to get my hop sock down in there and get some moisture in that. And if I can get those hops, the oil from the hops, to release early, then it will reduce me having any problems with the boil over. This will be coming back to a boil here in just a little bit. Once it does, I'm going to boil this liquid for 50 minutes with the hops that I have in there, and that is 1 ounce of that Cascade hops, and that's going to be what we call a bittering hop. Now what happens is, as we boil the liquid, the oils from the hops will then incorporate into the liquid, okay? They will not unless you boil it. So boiling is absolutely essential in order to get those oils to remain in the beer. All right, so we boil it. Okay, as we can see, when we look down in here, we see a lot of movement in the liquid, a lot of things going on, and that is just the beginning of your boil. So I thought I'd let you just take a look at it and see exactly what that looks like. You can see a lot of activity there, right? A lot of things rolling and moving around. And this is all a part of beer making. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that really happens. And when you look inside of a fermenter as it's fermenting, you'll see movement just like this, but it'll be from yeast activity, and it's quite robust. It's I was surprised when I first saw fermenting and saw how much movement and how fast that movement occurred. All right, we've just now broke a boil. As you can see, we've got that foam on top, but it's not really too thick. And that is, let's give it its just due, that is that hops, the oil from it, actually keeping that foam down low. It works, folks. So, and that's the reason I always say put those hops in early, not late, and that way you don't have to go through that mess, okay? So there it is. We're up and boiling. It's going to start a 50-minute timer. All right, it has been 50 minutes. Now, I have my hop sock here. I'm going to drop this down in here. At the end of the boil, which is in the last 10 minutes, we add extra hops. One that provides flavor, and the other which is called a finishing hops, and that provides that extra aroma, and it's really nice. So this is a ½ ounce each of the same Cascade hops that I boiled with. And I'll do it for 5 minutes, and then I'll drop another one in there, and that'll be another 5 minutes. Then I shut off the boil. I'm going to pour a bunch of water in here. That'll cool everything down. And at the same time, I'll be pulling out these hop socks. So, and that's the end of that. It'll then just go into a carboy, which I ferment in, and we'll put in some yeast. And we'll look at that in a little while. All right, I have pulled my hop socks out of this liquid, and what I did is I just take a pair of tongs, grab the end of it, and roll it up against the side of the pan. That way it kind of wrings out the any of the juices, any of the liquid, and at the same time I extract what's left in my hop oils. So it kind of a 2-for-1 thing. Now at the end though, I want to put in a lot of liquid. This is cold water, and I want to put it in nice and fast. I've just now turned off this burner. Whoop, made a little mess, but not a big one. There we go. Now, we'll stir that. And the whole idea here, if I can save those volatile oils from the hops that were put in there for finishing and flavor, we do that by cooling it down quickly. And this is my method for doing that. So, yep, that brought it way down. It's not cold yet, but at least it's cool enough that those volatile oils are now protected. And I'm going to be transferring this in a little bit to a fermenter as soon as it's cool enough to pour safely. And then I will bring extra water into the fermenter to bring it up to 5 gallons. Right now I think I'm around 4 gallons here, about. It is time for me to pour this up. Now this liquid has cooled down a lot. It's still around 120 degrees. I can touch the outside of this, but not for a long period of time without discomfort. So I'm just going to put on some gloves, and then I'm going to take my funnel here, put it in place. Important to have this nice big funnel, all right? You're going to be handling a lot of liquids. The funnel has these little ribs on the outside of it. Do not force the funnel into the neck. You want it to be kind of loose, and those ribs hold it away from the edge so that air can come up out of there. If not, the funnel will pop loose and you'll end up with a mess. Okay, so always leave it loose. Now these type of funnels, this particular one, is sold at most home brewing supplies. It's designed to hold a lot of liquid and to handle a lot, and it does a very good job of it. So I really recommend you get one of those. They're fairly inexpensive. There we go, empty pot. This is not quite full, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring it up to full in the place that I'm going to have it fermenting. So I have this now where I'm planning on keeping it for fermenting. This lower line is 5 gallons, this one's 6. I mark all of my carboys that way so I know exactly how much to put in them. Whenever you're putting in a colder liquid like this into this warm beer, or the wort I should say, it's going to not want to mix right off. So take your mixing paddle and give that a good stir. Okay, at this point, while I have gone ahead and put some air in it by spinning it really well, after this I want to avoid air contact with that beer. So we're going to be putting in the yeast in a little bit. After that, we'll put a fermentation lock on the top, and this thing will get kicked up doing what it's going to do. So we don't want to stir it or mess with it after it gets to the yeast. but that little bit of air will help that yeast get started when it's first being put together, just like this. All right, it has come time to inoculate this, and that's the terminology that's commonly used. It means just putting the yeast down in there, all right? So, simple enough. With this type of yeast, we simply cut open the package and pour it right down into the fermenter. There we go. And this package is just the right amount to make 5 gallons of beer. It's a perfect measurement for it. All right, I decided we take a look at the fermenter. There's the fermenting lock on top, just bubbling away. Down here in the tank, well, it's a whole different story. I'm going to get a light. I'm going to shine it on this thing. There we go. Look at all that activity. This thing from top to bottom has these currents on the bottom that kind of swirl around. This is very unique. This current activity is strong. On the bottom it kind of sweeps back up and around. And this is all created by the work of the yeast itself. That's how busy it gets when your yeast is doing what it does. This will go on for several days like this. When I started brewing this beer, it looked very much this color of this, kind of a caramel color. But now it has turned much darker. Of those two carboys, it is the one on the right-hand side. That is the pale ale. So let's take a close look at this so we know what's going on. All right, I'm getting ready to bottle these two beers. Now, this is the one I've been showing you guys. This is our pale ale, and it's my how to make beer video. Basically, this is sort of a how-to on all of it. Now, I'm not going to show you racking this because, you know, I've got a video of racking the cider, okay? And it's the exact same process. I want to show you some clips from that in just a minute. You need to know, on this one though, the color of this isn't as dark as it looks here. It looks like it has turned as dark as my brown beer. Well, folks, the reason that it looks like this, the reason that beer over there looks caramel color, the caramel color is the particles that are suspended in the beer and the light reflecting off of them. This beer does not have that going on now. The particles are dropped. My yeast is down here at the bottom. By the way, this is good savable yeast, and you can keep the yeast off of your secondary fermenter, believe it or not. It is repitchable. And I've already been doing that. Just save back about a cup of the beer inside of this to swirl with the yeast and pour into something you can save it in. I'll be racking this to a dispensing bucket. I'm going to prime it, and that's where I add 3/4 of a cup of dextrose. That is corn sugar. Racking our beer. Now once I start this, I'm going to gently tip my carboy back and tuck a rag under the front edge of it. But I'll get it started first. This is a clip that clips to the side of the bucket and clips onto the hose to hold it in place. Now drain off the water. There we go. There's our beer. Right there. Now you can easily see the color of what we have going on there. There we go. That allows the liquid to collect to the back so that my siphon catches all of it. All right, I have about a cup, maybe a cup and a quarter of water boiling there, if that much. I have 3/4 of a cup of dextrose here. This is just a fine powdered dextrose. This is commonly used in commercial cooking. Just pour it in here, stir it in. Now, I'll say this, a good quality commercial dextrose will dissolve almost instantly. And that has, as I bring it back in temperature, it'll turn clear. And then I'll let it cool just a little bit, and I'm ready to put it into my beer in order to use it for priming sugar. So this is the sugar that we use to create carbonation in the bottles. And it's a very specific measurement. 3/4 of a cup of dextrose to 5 gallons of sugar, or excuse me, to 5 gallons of beer. No more, only 3/4 of a cup. If you use more, you're going to explode your bottles, so don't do that. You use the right amount, it won't be a problem at all, and you'll get a beautiful fizzy beer. There we go. That has turned clear again. It only had to come back to a boil. Now that it has, I can turn off the flame. We're going to let that cool down a little bit, and then I'm going to prime my beer with it. Now I can go in at any time, but I let it cool just a bit, and it only takes about 5 minutes. All right, my sugar has had a moment to cool just a little bit. Something I want to mention to you is, as you're stirring like so, you want to also bring the paddle up this way, kind of in an upward sweep like so, like this. See how it causes that liquid to turn, and it's pulled up from the bottom at the same time. That's exactly what we need to do here. What that does is that pulls that heavier liquid, that sugar dense liquid, up from the bottom. Even though I'm drizzling it in, it's going to go straight to the bottom. Some of it gets mixed, but some hits the bottom of the container. Bottling beer is like this. Folks, when you're going to bottle your beer, you want to leave about that much of a airspace on top of your beer. So if you overfill, just pour a little bit into the next bottle. It's not the big deal. And if you underfill, add a little more, because if your beer is way down here, it can overpressurize and your bottle can crack or explode on you. And I keep saying that, explode. I don't mean to frighten you. That's not the intent. The intent is to help you get it right so you don't run into issues. So what I'm going to do is going to fill this thing up. Now I let the fluid cascade down the side of the bottle so it catches less air. It's going to catch a little regardless. And done. We are done right there. So my fluid level is right here. That's just perfect. All right, now I want to do another one. Pro tip number 2. Underneath this bucket where I'm working, I have a towel on the floor. Go ahead and put a towel down. You're going to have drips and spills, and sometimes these little spouts, they have a tendency to spit a little bit after you've taken the bottle away. So be prepared. Sometimes that happens. Now let me show you how we cap these things up, and you'll know how to prepare your beer. Okay, capping our beer. It's as simple as, I use a hand capper. Now I've been thinking about getting one of those nice press cappers, but guess what? That costs money, and right now I'm trying to keep it on the inexpensive. Now, and I've already got this one, why not use it? Right on the bottom of the capper, you have a little magnet here that'll hold your crown cap in place. These are standard pressed down crown caps that have been on the market for, like the last 100 years. And you need a bottle that has the right flange. So you have the upper flange for the cap and a flange halfway down for your capper. And that's the right kind of bottle. There we go. So as simple as that. These will take about 2 weeks to build pressure and push down into that beer. I'm going to say this though, patience is a virtue when it comes to making good ale, right? And that's what these are. These are an ale. These need what we call bottle conditioning. If it sits in this bottle for a month or 2 or 4, then it gets really, really good. So give it at least 1 month. If you want to give it more, it just gets better with each passing day, ladies and gentlemen. And the way you'll know if it's carbonated, you will see a thin cake of yeast on the bottom. And I recommend not drinking out of your bottles because you don't want to have to sanitize them that much. Always just pour the beer into a glass, leave the yeast behind along with a little bit of beer, wash it out immediately so that it's easy to keep your bottles clean, and beer making is fun and easy. Now there's one last thing I want to mention about bottling, and that is these old cola bottles, things like this. These things are designed for high pressure. They will work fine. Yes, you can bottle beer in these bottles. Just sanitize them the same way you would a glass bottle. Keep the caps. You can even buy new caps for these if you want. And you've got bottles that will work well for you. So understand, bottles don't have to be expensive, and sometimes you can always recycle and save yourself a buck, end up with something that's really cool. It has been a little bit of time. Okay, now here's the thing. These are not fully carbonated. I have a pale ale here that is coming along. It's beginning to carbonate, and so it's going to produce a wonderful beer for me. What I'm looking forward to, though, is showing you what that beer looks like and telling you what it tastes like. This is one of my favorites. It's, like I said, it's my malty pale. I remember the flavors. It's a little bit malty, biscuity, has a kind of a cracker-like flavor to it, or biscuit flavor, you could say, which is the reason they call it biscuit malt. And the hops that I use has a citrusy-like flavor to it. So it's kind of like if you were to take a beer and squeeze a lime or lemon into it. Similar to that. Let's see. Okay, gave me a little noise. A little vapor coming off the top there. Yeah, So, let's see what we got. It's a beautiful color. Oh yeah. Look at that. You know, that's what I'm hoping for right there. When I'm pouring up a beer, I want to see it to be able to produce that nice little head going on there. Okay, I want that. I want good color down in there. It looks like I got a little of my yeast off the bottom of the bottle. Won't hurt a thing. Oh, that's good. Sweet. Malty, getting a nice fizz to it. That's a pale ale worth having. Very simple, folks. It's not a hard thing to make beer. It's not a hard thing. Excuse me. It's not a hard thing to homebrew. Delightful stuff. And there's a lot of different things you can do. If you learn how to do beer, which is in my view the hardest thing to do because it involves a lot of different processes, everything else when it comes to making fermented beverages is remarkably easy. All right, to do a seltzer, it's just a matter of some sugar, yeast, and water, and then afterwards you prime it, put it in a bottle, and wait for it to build a fizz, and you've got a hard seltzer. It's no harder than that. Apple cider, one of the easiest things that you can do. You pour the apple juice in a carboy, put yeast in there, wait. It's going to be a couple of weeks. After your fermenting is done and it's nice and clear, you can put it in bottles. It's the easiest thing you can do right there. Just simple ciders and stuff like that. Wines don't take any real effort. So enjoy this, give it a try. It is a lot of fun. It's a great hobby. Also, do me a favor and take a look down below in the description box. You'll see some links there. One is to my website, that's S.A.Trotter.com. That's where you're going to get my recipes and a lot of other neat stuff. So take a look there. I do appreciate that. Also, there are a couple of other links there. They're affiliate links. This video was not sponsored in any way, but these affiliate links allow me to earn a little bit of extra money in the form of a commission if you decide you want to purchase those products. Now, one is to Wildgrain, which is a wonderful sourdough, pastry, and pasta subscription service. It's incredible. I've been using it for months now and I'm in love with it. All right, and some of the products they make are incredibly good. All right, so definitely check that out. All of their products are great, in fact. Yeah, check it out. There is another link there, and it is for a thermometer. Very simple, chef's temp thermometer. Please take a look at that. That is a very good value thermometer and one of the best quality ones I've used that's a home thermometer in a very long time. So it's definitely worth your worth your time. I'm sorry, I'm a little tang-tungled. It's my first beer, go figure. So anyway, take a look at that. Thank you for coming here. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. Click the like button, it helps me a whole lot. Also, comments down below, folks. I want to hear your comments, suggestions, and things like that. It's always good to hear from my regulars as well as new people. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your pale ale. I sure will. And please, have a good day.